Hey, yeah, just a quick one. But people often talk about George Orwell as the main, seems to be the guy who people believe was the great prophet. Yeah, the guy that predicted, to a degree, albeit using technology relevant to his time. I don't think he was necessarily, well, no one could, I guess, at that point have forecast what type of technology we would have today. So I guess he gave a vision of the future that was fairly bleak. I say fairly; it was very bleak, but actually, it's not as bleak as it is, because what he didn't understand was just how much of a role technology would play in locking down every aspect of truth and amplifying every aspect of propaganda. However, the guy that gets kind of missed off in all of this, and by the way, George Orwell wasn't a prophet, right? He was part of the Fabian Society, same society that people like Starmer are part of. And look, I'm not partisan here. They're all corrupt. Doesn't matter whether they're Labour, Conservative, whatever. However, H.G. Wells, so he wrote a book called The Time Machine, which on the surface of it is a kind of a cute little science fiction story. Guy goes off in his time machine and has some adventures. But there's a really interesting main chunk of his story, which is based in a future where you have two beings, and I guess they're two kind of offshoots of humanity. One is called the Eloi, and one are called the Morlocks. Think of actually how similar that is to Moloch, because it'll be relevant in a second. So the Eloi, when he lands in his time machine, or he just appears in his time machine in this future period, first thing he sees is what looks like utopia. So he sees these Eloi people, and they're all kind of wearing sort of Romanesque white robes. Everything's pristine, and they are all sitting having picnics, eating grapes. I mean, this is quite literal. They could have been a bit more subtle, I guess, with it, but they're eating grapes and talking and chatting and looking happy. And there's loads of them, and they're rolling green fields. Okay, people in white robes. They're all blonde. I think most of them think they're all blonde, right? And they're all good looking, male and female. And then what happens is one of these people falls into the river, and there's a river that's running next to them, and to his shock and horror, they all they turn and look and see what's happened, and then they just watch. They didn't do anything. They don't even look concerned. They don't look like, oh my god. They're not stuck in shock, paralysis. They literally just look and do nothing. They're kind of interested, curious, but indifferent, really. And he jumps in and saves her. Now that reminds me an awful lot of people that you might call NPCs today. A group of people who will comply, and they will look with interest at people who are either suffering, and they'll look with fear, I guess, at people who try and intervene. And that's exactly how they looked at our protagonist, this time traveller in that film. When he appears, he goes and saves her. They are very disturbed by that. Okay, very similar to them being disturbed by people like you or me when we do things that aren't necessarily about compliance. Now, underground is a group of guys called the Morlocks, and these are ugly bastards, and they live underground. And that's very significant when you understand just how big a part underground living actually plays even now. And they eat the Eloi. So every now and again there is what is effectively an air raid siren goes off, and the Eloi stand up, you would presume probably just by conditioned habit, and they all wander off, and they go into what looks like these big churches, right, massive buildings. The doors open, they walk in until the building's full, and then the doors shut. The ones who don't walk in just walk back and carry on having their picnics. And those people that go into that church are eaten. You don't see them being eaten, but it's made clear that they are. So they're food for the Morlocks who eat them. Now think about all those parallels in that film. It's really interesting. It's worth actually a watch. It's an old film. It's quite cute on the surface. It's quite nice to watch. It's almost a Christmassy film. It's set in, I think it's set around Christmas time, and it's one of those one of the early colour films. So it's all done in a very nostalgic way when you watch it. So it's kind of quite enjoyable to watch, but when you look at the parallels about kind of where we're at now, even on the exoteric level, if you then look below the surface, quite literally, then it's quite unnerving, and you wonder just how much people like H.G. Wells had been made aware of what was coming. Because trust me, that guy, just like George Orwell, they weren't prophets, right? They knew exactly what was coming. Not because they were able to see into the future. They were just aware of the plans that were already in place a long time earlier.